Do you want to save your town from evil monsters as a nurse, skateboarder, or even a dog? Well, I got the board game for you. This is The Last Defense, a game made by Funko Games. Yes, you heard that right. Funko, who make those Funko Pops. It's a game for 2 to 6 players. It is a cooperative board game that is very fun. Let me show you what's in the box. So when you open up the box, you get the instructions, which this is a very simple game, by the way. Not even 4 pages of instructions. You get the board, which is actually it's not too big, but it's not too small. I think this is a good size for the board. Then, if I can actually get the board closed, you get a bunch of baggies of stuff. You get a bunch of tokens, Rubble and Scientist tokens. You get the monsters themselves. You get the tool cards. You get your player tiles and monster tiles. The stands for the monsters. 2 dice, and a baggie with some models. Now, what's actually pretty awesome about this game is that it's interactive with an app. Yes, you heard that right. It's interactive with an app, which is free on the App Store for you to download. So let's take a look at what this app does. Alright, so I've set up the game. As you can see, we have the Good Dog and the Barbecue Dad as the players for this game. They also come with a skateboarder, construction worker, soccer champ, and an on-call nurse. And if we take a look, each has their own model in a color that matches the player tile, which is pretty cool. And the models actually aren't too bad, to be honest. They're a little flimsy like with this, but that's neither here nor there. I have the board set up, we have the tool cards here, the monsters all set up there, and what you do is there's 2 different tokens, the Scientist tokens and the Rubble tokens. You put the Rubble tokens on top of the Scientist tokens, and then we have the 2 dice here. That's pretty much the setup for the game. Then both players start in the plaza here. So on the app, if you hit New Game and then check off all of these and hit Next, you actually get a pretty cool little thing going on here. So let's listen.
Interrupt our regular programming to bring you this important news. We have reports around the city of damage caused by unknown monsters. We have people trapped at these locations. The zoo. The gardens. The farmer's market. The factory. And the megastore. First responders are overwhelmed and are calling on local citizens to help in this crisis. You are our last defense.
That's the name of the game, guys. So then you could check that off. So what I did was it tells you basically where the Rubble tokens start. So it starts at the zoo, farmer's market, gardens, megastore, and factory. And you're going to start the timer. It's going to give you more story, essentially. But you have to defeat 4 out of 5 of the monsters in 20 minutes. So we have the timer going on the app, and as the game progresses, the monsters are going to come onto the board and place more Rubble tokens onto the board. And what's going to happen is, on your turn, you're going to roll the 2 dice, and we got a 2 for the arrow and 2 for green. So that means that you can move 2 spaces and pick up 2 tools. But first, you draw 2 tool cards, and these tool cards are essentially like a bunch of different items, and they are used to rescue the scientists. So for example, if we have the Barbecue Dad going, he picked up 2 cool tools from the dice, and he gets to move 2 spaces. So let's say he goes all the way to the gardens down here. When you end your turn in a space, you flip over the Rubble token. So for example, you need a megaphone and fire extinguisher to save the scientist. And if you have those items in your hand, you can discard those items and discard the Rubble token to pick up the scientist. So for example, this is a meteorologist, and there's different scientists that are actually in the game. So then the Barbecue Dad would hold onto the meteorologist, and then the Good Dog would go. So he picks up 1 tool, and then he gets to move 2 spaces. So let's say he goes to the factory, flips that over. For that, we need a flare and some pliers. So basically the whole game is to rescue the scientists. But what's going to happen is also throughout the game, the monsters are going to come onto the board when the app designates or lets you know when that happens. Alright, so the news report is going on, so now we're going to see where the monsters are going to come onto the board.
On the move to the Megastore.
So,
Spider robots are moving to the Megastore.
alright, so the spider robots are going to the Megastore. So you take the mover for the monster, you put it at the location, and you place another rubble token onto the board at that location, and then you flip over their token. So for the spider robots, we need an astrophysicist and an engineer. And there are different, like for example, that's the engineer, and that's another engineer. And you basically need the scientists to bring them to the plaza, drop them off, and then we're able to destroy the monsters. And every time you defeat a monster, you hit threat defeated, then you hit that you've defeated the monster. And you have to do all of this in 20 minutes. Throughout the game, more monsters are going to come on the board. The spider robots might move around the board. So for example, let's keep listening.
We have a new report that space aliens appear to be landing at the Megastore. Repeat, space aliens are landing at the Megastore.
So as you can see, I placed the space aliens at the Megastore with the spider robots and also placed another rubble token and a scientist there. Now, if a monster lands in a space that has you in it, you go to the rest area and then you have to come out of there to keep going. There are also helicopter tokens that let you go wherever you want on the board. And you also cannot have more than 5 tools, and you can trade tools with other players if you're in the same space as them. And that's it. This game is surprisingly very simple. It's as simple as rolling the dice, drawing tools, moving, getting the scientists, and hopefully defeating 4 out of 5 of the monsters. If you defeat all 4 out of 5 of the monsters, you guys win the game. Because it's just a very simple, laid back, but you're also like really in the moment because, like I said, you have 20 minutes to do this. And surprisingly, it can get very hard because you cannot move into a space with a monster unless you have a flare card, which is one of these, to discard. And when you discard it, you might flip over the rubble token, and then you might need a flare to discard to get the scientist that's there. Barbecue Dad, on his tile it says neighborhood, so if a monster's in the neighborhood, he can move into there without actually discarding a flare. And the good dog is the gardens, and everybody has different things like that. Like the skateboarder has the shopping mall, so she can go into the shopping mall without discarding a flare if there's a monster there. After a while of, playing this, it's kind of getting boring, and there are 2 different difficulties for this game. You have the beginner difficulty. But with the experience difficulty, it's like within a minute and a half, and monsters keep coming onto the board and moving around very quickly, because if a monster lands in a space with you, you don't only go to the rest area, you have to drop the scientists in that space. And that happens a lot, and it's funny when the app says, the junk blob is going to the neighborhood. It's like, I just went to the neighborhood, so it's a lot of fun, and it gets stressful. So the app kind of keeps it fresh, but playing as different characters doesn't really mean anything besides, going to the location and not having to discard a flare when there's a monster there, but that doesn't really happen that much. So it's getting a little boring. But I still don't mind kicking this out and playing this 4 times in a row in, about an hour and a half. So that is The Last Defense board game. This game, if you can believe it, is only $20. I think it is definitely worth it for $20. And I think it even is on Amazon on sale all the time for like $13 or even $11. So at that price point, you get a lot of crazy stuff in this. There is a lot of crazy games that we have played where it's just down to the wire, 30 seconds left. I'm like, okay, you gotta discard this. Okay, run there. It gets pretty intense and pretty crazy, and I think you start off with the beginner mode. It's kind of fun, but where it really gets challenging is the experience mode because monsters are really just jumping around the board and it gets crazy. But if you have the Last Defense game, let me know down in the comments below what you think. Do you like it? Do you not like it? And if you don't have this game, I definitely recommend you get it. It is very fun. Even at 2 players, it's pretty fun. 6 players, it can get a little overcrowded and boring, but I think about 4 to 5, 4 players mainly is where it's at. So definitely pick this game up if you don't have it. But that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed. I'll be doing more board game reviews like this coming out in the future. So, guys, that's it. See you in the next one. Look at the 2 links in the description to our Patreon page and our Discord server. Help support the channel a lot. Guys, see you in the next one.